Welcome to Trending in Education. Mike Palmer here. I'm joined today by Mark Milliron, who is the president of National University. Mark, welcome to Trending in Education.
Glad to be here.
We're here in sunny, although it's kind of gray today.
The first of 5 days.
First of 5 days of marine layers. Yeah, we're here in San Diego for the ASU+GSV conference, where everyone comes here in early April and kind of sees where the future of education might be headed. A lot of AI activity, and then there's a lot of philanthropic and venture activity and conversations all around. How's the conference been for you so far?
That's good. I mean, ASU+GSV is always a wonderful venue. It helps catalyze conversations between different parts of the kind of education ecosystem. It is a combination of institutions, foundations, intermediaries, and nonprofits with a whole lot of venture dollars that are coming in. For the kind of people who are trying to develop tools and technologies and companies for the education space, it becomes like a speed dating thing where they just are meeting with a lot of the people. And folks like me who are in the higher ed sector now, in the institutional sector, we become kind of the reality therapy people. We'd like talk about like, okay, how would this actually be used? And how would it be installed and all that.
Right.
Yeah, but it's fun. You get an idea of like, here are the 3 or 4 things you got to see on the horizon. You know this, edtech leaders are always trying to kind of talk about what's coming next and what's going to be so transformative in X, Y, and Z. But institutional leaders, one of the things we know is that we are always on a journey from novel to normal with our teams.
Right.
There's always something novel that was in a few years is going to be normal. And like we have to be scouting. We always have to be scouts to see what are the novel things that we need to figure out. How do we test, try, tune, and deploy in a thoughtful way to help impact the students that we care about.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of like horizons thinking and kind of jumping S curves, like trying to get on something new when it's just taking off. We want to talk more about what you're doing at National as far as that goes, but to start, maybe get to know you a little better.
Yeah.
Can you catch folks up on who you are and how you wound up where you are today?
Oh yeah, it's a long circuitous path. I am a 30+ year educator doing work in a whole different set of sectors in the world of education. I've been a part of 8 book projects, probably written 300 articles.
Yeah.
I've been deeply involved in the philanthropy world. I was at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, helped launch the Post-Secondary Success Initiative with founder Hillary Pennington, was chair of the board of the Trellis Foundation, still on the Trellis Foundation doing work with that. Also did consulting with K-12, community colleges, universities all over the world. I ran a group called Catalyze Learning International, was on faculty at UT Austin, helped run a big international association for community colleges called the League for Innovation.
Okay.
So I was a CEO of that, about 800 institutions and big conferences, research publications, and the rest.
Yeah.
And then after the Gates Foundation, I got kind of frustrated because I was watching how all these other sectors were leveraging data to get a lot better at helping, whether it was healthcare, whether it was consumer side. And co-founder and I, Charles Thornburg, founded a company called Catalyze Learning in partnership with a bunch of foundations and others, all focused on the mission was 1 million more, help 1 million more students learn well, finish strong, launch effectively.
Yeah.
And that was fun. We had a blast. And and I would argue we were one of the kind of chief catalyst of the analytic student success movement.
Right.
That kind of kicked off in around 2011, 2012.
Which is everywhere now.
Which is everywhere now. And we're proud that we were one of the big catalysts. I'm still on the board of Civitas Learning, love the work that they're doing. But I always knew I'd go back into education. So after we got it launched up and got it to the place where it's sustainable and doing it really well, I bolted out and now I'm president of National University, which is the short way of saying a National University is my jam. It is a university that is 100% focused on nonprofit, private, 100% focused on non-traditional working and military students.
I see.
So we are about 50,000 students a year, about a third doctoral, third master's, third bachelor's.
All online?
No, 80% online.
80% online.
Yeah, about 80% online. And we were not founded as an online university. We were founded in 1971 by a PhD Navy captain who was heartbroken watching service members trying to use their GI Bill.
Yeah.
And traditional education, nothing wrong with traditional education, just didn't work for them.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to start a graduate school. We began as a graduate school that would specifically create a new model. And in particular would focus on his big innovation at the time was one course at a time, as opposed to 4 courses at the same time.
Okay.
And so let's do shorter courses. Let's do 4 and 8 week courses.
It's like work-life balance.
It's cognitive load. I can focus, if I'm raising kids working full time, I can focus on one course. I can't focus on four.
Right.
Right. So, and that model was radically successful. And National University went from a crazy idea in 1971 with a group of all former officers who went to WASC and said, hey, let us start this. And they got it off and going. Now 250,000 alumni worldwide. We've got students in all 50 states. We are one of the largest nonprofit private universities out there. We're a Research 2 university on our way to becoming a Research 1. The thing I love about it is all of our programming is though focused on we absolutely do not believe in the false narrative that if you care about trying to be more accessible, you can't care about quality.
Right.
No, we began as a graduate school. We are totally focused on high quality and accessibility innovation. So now, I mean, obviously we'll use whatever technology tool, policy practice that'll help non-traditional working and military students be successful. So for us, that's online, that's hybrid. We even have a metaverse campus, like whatever will work, which is why being at a place like ASU+GSV,
makes a lot of sense.
We're going to lean into. No, so the red thread of my career has always been, how can we help more hard-charging strivers from more diverse backgrounds? And diversity isn't just racial and ethnic. Diversity is parents, military, working students, that, and how do we help more of them be successful in higher ed pathways? That's really the red thread of my own career for it. And I would argue like one of our number one kind of like focus areas right now is to make sure we can change the conversation on what a college student is. Because when you say the word college student, everybody in the country, the number one thing to think about is an 18-year-old with a backpack on the quad, not working, going full time.
Right.
And that's like 20% of higher ed.
Right.
The vast majority of higher ed, much more complex lives. We call them Anders. And Anders we call them Anders because they're parents and students. They're employees and students. They're caregivers for elderly parents and students. And service members and students. And our job is to meet them in the end and take them where they want to be able to go. So it's one of the things great about nationals. We know who we are. We know who we serve. Faculty love who we serve. There's no argument about serving that student population. So it's kind of cool.
And then the destination for them, one of the ways in which we're measuring success now is a successful employment opportunity on the other side, staying on a track that's going to be future relevant. And
you want to go there?
Well, it's about time. The world is changing pretty fast and people are trying to figure out, the return on their higher ed investment. How does it wind up being relevant in the world of work?
100%. So because we know, love, and care about our students, one of the things we ask ourselves is, why do they come to National University? And simple answer is, they come to get degrees. And then you dig deeper, you find out, no, it's not about the degree. They actually have made a decision. Almost everyone who comes to us has made a decision that they want to change their lives in some way. And that could be a career change. It could be a promotion. It could be advancement. It's just deeper learning, whatever it might be, but they want to change their lives in some way. And the degree is a means to an end. And so we started asking a lot of deeper questions within our own strategic plan. And we basically have our own theory of change, like what we can do to catalyze that kind of change for folks. We actually think our job is to embrace next generation education. And that's not a trendy phrase. That is, what are the technologies, techniques, policies, and practices that are improving education, making it more accessible and better? We should be embracing that. Second, we need to wrap that in whole human education, which is understanding who our students are and providing the right support for the right student at the right time in the right way. By the way, for rock stars, that means get out of their way. You just don't let your bureaucracy get in the way of the rock stars. And then for others, they need more scaffolding. So that might be scholarships, that might be career support, that might be peer relationships, whatever it is. So our belief is next gen wrapped in whole human. And then what do you aim it at, which is your question around the value. Our real goal is we're trying to make sure completion is the low bar. Of course, we want our students to complete. But that is a really low aspirational bar. Like our bar is, if they do want to change their lives, we've got to be transformational for them. We got to help them get there. So we believe in what we call value-rich education. And value-rich education for us is, we have kind of three big demarcation points for that. And you could probably add 7 in there, but the 3 big ones for us are, we call it's credential rich, connection rich, experience rich. And credential rich is, what are the family of credentials they could earn while they're with you that would help them have the most, basically post-secondary credentials with labor market value that give them more choices in terms of where they go. There's a few benefits with that. One is it creates on-ramps. So I can get my police academy training, and then that actually crosswalks into assessment of prior learning into 7 courses knocked off of a criminal justice degree,
Right.
right? Because it already aligns.
Yeah.
Or it could actually be a credential, for example, like a construction management certification that allows me to be a foreman and get a higher paying job while I'm
Right.
finishing my construction management bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Right. So like the idea is you can help low income first generation people stay out of poverty by getting them a better credential earlier.
Yeah.
Right. It actually creates academic momentum. Our data shows they don't leave earlier because they get that certification. They're twice as likely to finish.
Right.
So we've challenged all of our program leaders to look at every possible high value credential that they can curate into a degree pathway.
I see.
So let's build in associate's degrees, certifications, any kind of badge that we can curate in as part of the pathway, which creates value.
Yeah.
The second is connection rich. There's no reason that if you're using, online, or if you're using hybrid, or if you're using metaverse, it has to be impersonal.
Yeah.
So we really believe deeply in connecting students to students, students to faculty, and students to professionals.
That's where I say social mobility and Raj Shetty.
But part of the idea is like those relationships are often transformational for these students. So how do we make that intentional to build more of those? So we have a peer navigator network. We do a bunch of work with our faculty to engage with our students. We have our alumni connecting with our students and also professionals within the space. And then our third level of this is what we call experience rich, which is how can we use, based on the program, what are the family of apprenticeships, internships, clinicals, project-based learning. We're a user of Ripen, which is project-based learning from the workplace
on the show
built in, which is great.
Yeah.
And we love it. Ripen's been fantastic for us.
Yeah.
And that value-rich framework has become a wonderful framework to catalyze a conversation across all of our program leads so that they can think, okay, what are we doing in our program to make sure that we're getting this kind of value in it?
Yeah.
So again, we believe deeply in that return on, investment, passion, purpose, and direction. And, they really are making sometimes heroic decisions to be able to pursue the education. We have to make good on it for them. Right.
And then what about the perception of higher ed out there in the field, out there in your universe? Because there is, politically, folks are maybe questioning the degree and, the alternative pathways versus, it sounds like you're sort of a little more holistic in your understanding of that.
Here's our problem with higher education, or one of the problems with higher education. The same example I said before. I'll go in front of an audience and say, everybody close your eyes, picture a college student. Everybody pictures that 18-year-old with a backpack in the quiet. When you say the word higher ed, everybody in the media thinks about Harvard, Princeton, Stanford. That is like 1% of higher education. They're not thinking about the typical pathways. There are lots of affordable, accessible, quality pathways out there. This is a navigation problem. You have to help students navigate to the option that makes sense for them. So for example, we are huge partners with the California community colleges. We have 100 plus transfer agreements. And if you go to a California community college and you get an associate's degree, we're a part of the ADT transfer program, associate degree transfer program. If you're a part of ADT and you come to National University and you're low income first generation and you're on a Pell Grant, like we've matched the tuition of the community college. So basically it's tuition free. It is free college all the way through your bachelor's degree, which is fantastic. And so there are those kinds of options, by the way, and states all over the place. Like there are, so part of it's navigating and helping our students find those places. And then understanding that there are just different choices. There are some students who want to go to a, on-campus residential experience, and God bless them. They should have a great experience if they're doing that. And there's a marketplace to do that and pick the one that makes the most sense. I think what people have finally realized is that there is a myth of the elites being the only place you can go if you wanted to have opportunity. And that's just not the case. I think Google, Amazon, a bunch of them have already done the studies, and they've found that their best contributions come from people that come from state schools and independent schools, not necessarily from the elites.
And then also the nature of work, artificial intelligence is one of the big themes here. Like the way in which people do work is changing rapidly, and folks who maybe even got a college degree or has some college 10, 15, 20 years ago, there's a lot of need to reskill, continue to learn.
Let me tell you what, if you're a liberal arts educator, you should be in bliss right now. Because whatever you want to call them, durable skills, essential skills, some people call them soft skills, of course, they're the hardest. Like it is the ability to learn how to learn and the ability to write well, speak well, work in teams, problem solve, decision make, all those kind of durable skills I talk about have never been more important because we are, there's this like truism that everybody repeated, a decade ago that, hey, we're educating people for jobs that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
That has never been more true than right
It's
now.
true.
And it's
Yeah.
only getting worse.
Yeah.
Like literally 5 years ago at this event, everybody was telling everybody to train as many software engineers as you possibly could.
Yes.
And now there are no jobs for software engineers.
Yeah.
Right. And so part of what we've got to figure out is we have to build those durable skills
Yeah.
in to the programs as a part of this, because what we're going to need is people to learn, unlearn, relearn, like constantly throughout their careers.
Yeah.
So one of the other things we're at National, we are huge advocates for really thinking about the policy world to make sure we're creating a policy and funding infrastructure that rewards 21st century learning, not just 20th century learning.
Yeah.
20th century higher ed was very focused on the right from high school student. God bless it. I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of 18-year-olds coming out. They should have a great experience. But increasingly, it is some college no credential and or the older population.
Yeah.
And that population needs a different funding model. Pell doesn't work really well for it.
Right.
So we're pushing hard for military tuition assistance to be raised.
Yeah.
Really pushing hard on employer tuition assistance, like 5250 programs.
Yeah.
Because we think that's a killer model. Like when you create a tax cut for employers to provide tuition assistance and a tax cut for the employee for taking it, you'll create a structural incentive for the employer to work with the higher education institution.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get better curricular alignment. You're going to get internships, apprenticeships, all kinds of on-ramping with assessment of prior learning coming out of their training out of the company.
Yeah.
I just think we're going to see better higher education outcomes for more students if we can get that kind of a funding system in.
Yeah.
And it's better than Pell. No, we're actually better with both.
Right.
We actually need both models if it's going to work.
Yeah.
And part of this is kind of valuing that larger sector. So long way around your question around the perception of higher ed. The problem is the perception of higher ed is dominated by the elite private schools that are, what's something called highly rejective colleges.
Yes.
That's not the norm.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. But then, maybe circling back to what you're doing at National, one of the things that's a challenge on the higher ed side is how do you engage with things like AI when there is sort of underpinning of independent authorship and intellectual property within academia. And then there was the initial sort of like knee jerk into like, let's stop the cheating. Let's scan
that's
everything.
still there.
And it's still there.
Yeah.
But
Which was there with the internet. Same thing happened with the internet.
But big picture, I know you're a big picture guy. Like, how do you see AI kind of integrating into the higher ed experience, both in terms of the skills, but also perhaps in the product?
So I think there's a playbook for how these things play out in the world of education.
Yeah.
It happened with microcomputers. It happened with the internet. It's going to happen with AI, where the innovators and early adopters will get moving and they'll be hyperbolic and they'll say things that are out of control and it'll kind of fall on its face for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then sooner or later, the more reasonable of them will actually begin to get traction and some things will happen.
Yeah.
And once you actually get some data, and especially get some data that it works, higher ed, then you get to that early majority. That early majority will jump on if you have data.
Yeah.
If you're showing us, hey, students are learning better, they're finishing stronger, the support is better for them, they're making better human connections, which is one of the ironic things about AI is I think we can actually get people connected.
I agree.
More than
It's
ever
been
before.
coming up. People are talking about that.
Deeply personal. And then once you get the data and you get more of that adoption, then you get playbooks.
Yeah.
And once you get the playbooks, you get the late majority.
Right.
Because in the late majority, it's plug and play. Okay, now I know the 5 things I have to do to kind of make it happen. And sometimes that process, like with microcomputers, took 20 years.
Right.
The internet took 10, 15. I think this will probably be a 5 to 10 year cycle.
That seems reasonable. Yeah. Because the randomized controlled trials that's one thing I've heard here a few different times. It's like a 2 or 3 year cycle. And the cycle times on like pivoting and reacting nowadays are much shorter.
Oh yeah, they're a lot.
So like you almost have to have a little bit of Kirk to pair with your Spock for your Trek fans out there. Like there has to be,
and you don't always have to do RCTs. You can, for stat geeks out there, you can use prediction-based propensity score.
Quasi experiment.
Yeah.
Like there's directional stuff.
But I think what's good is I think more and more people are willing to test, try, tune. And I think for us, it's going to be riding the waves and just being careful because in higher education institutions, which you really have to be careful of is you have a debate between dogmatic diatribes. You've got, hyperbolists that'll tell you that, you're all obsolete. And if you're not doing this, you're going to die and it's going to go away. And you'll be, all these institutions will be closed within the next 10 years and X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
And then you'll have caustic cynics who are
Yeah.
like, they don't believe anything. And it doesn't matter if being manna from heaven is too salty for them. They're angry.
Yeah.
And what you want to be able to do is kind of calm those caustic cynics and temper the true believers. You got to create the space for the thoughtful critics, the careful advocates to really chew on this stuff and do some work.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of folks in higher education that want to do the work, and they want to be tough-minded. They want to ask good questions. And figure out how we can make progress. I'm pretty encouraged by what we can do with the AI HI combination, right? I think that AI HI, I don't know if you've read the book Range, but the book Range is so good in talking about just what a wicked domain education and healthcare are.
Yeah.
And like, that's going to be an AI HI combo where we're going to have to figure out the playbooks for what the AI HI combo.
I like it. Dropping a little complexity on top of the complications. I appreciate it. I'm here with Dr. Mark Milliron, who's the president of National University. It's been a great conversation. As we're wrapping up here, any final thoughts, takeaways, anything we didn't talk about you wanted to make sure folks heard about?
Yeah, I think even in these uncertain times, and they are uncertain times, there's no doubt about it. And we've been through uncertain times before. You know, even at an event like this, you see people who are overly pessimistic or overly optimistic.
Yeah.
I've stolen a phrase from Hans Rosling, who is the kind of famous international troublemaker who passed away a few years ago. His kids are, his book Factfulness is like that, the most recent one.
Yeah.
But he has a phrase called, he doesn't want to be called an optimist. He wants to be called a possibilist. And I think there are real possibilities, and it's up to us to uncover those possibilities, get the data, get the playbooks, and develop the models for how we can use these tools, technologies, policies, practices. And remember, it's not all about the tech. I mean, sometimes it is. The great thing about the tech is it actually might give us the ability to pinpoint how we get people together at the right time, the right way. And my greatest wish is we can actually use technology so we can make human moments precious.
Yeah.
And that's going to be pretty powerful.
Amazing stuff here with Mark Milliron, the president of National University. Thank you so much for joining me on today's show.
Glad to be here.
And for our listeners, hopefully you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, tell your friends, do all the good things. We'll be back again soon. This is Trending in Education.